Communication is how we convey information and ideas to one another. When it's good, we move forward in our relationships, and those relationships improve and we see growth and benefit. When it's poor, relationships break down and can become destructive. Broadly speaking, there are 5 barriers to good communication. Number 1, I have the idea in my mind of what I want to convey to somebody else. Then step 2 is it comes to the words that come out of my mouth. Because what I say may not be accurately conveying the ideas in my mind. Number 3, the words you actually hear. Because what you hear from what comes out of my mouth may be different. Perhaps I mumbled, or perhaps there was some exterior noise, and so a word that I said sounded like something else. Then number 4 is the concept or the idea that you understood from what you actually heard. Again, that may be filtered based on your own history, your own experiences, your own expectations, and so forth. So what you've understood may be different from what you actually heard, which may be different from what I actually said, and that may be different from what I actually meant. And the 5th element is the memory of that, because as soon as those words are spoken and heard, we start into a phase of our memory of that situation, which again might be influenced by our expectations and understandings. Too many times I've seen a situation where somebody will swear that they said a certain thing, and then they're corrected and somebody brings either a recording or somebody says, well, wait a minute, didn't you say exactly this thing? And then in that memory, they're like, oh yeah, that's right, that's what I said. Even though moments before they swore it was something different. These barriers happen in every single one of our communication. It's rare that we speak in a way that fully conveys exactly what we meant and intended, and it's fully understood in that way by the other person. Active listening, which we'll be discussing in a few minutes, is, however, one of the best ways that we can achieve an excellence in communication that actually helps us meet that goal of conveying one idea to another person in a holistic way. However, here are a few other aspects of good communication. Strive for positive communication, even if it's a difficult subject matter. Look for an angle or a way to bring about that subject in a way that's positive, building, and growing for the person that you're addressing. Be clear and specific. If I simply say, you upset me, I may not know exactly what it is you're talking about or referring to, or worse, I think you're talking about one thing and in fact you're speaking about something else entirely, and so we suddenly end up on 2 different branches of a conversation. So if I say, I'm upset because you came into the room and you just put your things down and didn't greet me properly, now you know exactly why it is that I'm upset, and our conversation can begin at an effective place. Use I statements. This helps avoid a blaming sort of language. If I say, you're always making me angry, I'm putting my feelings on you and I'm blaming you. Whereas when I own it and I say, for example, I become very angry when you storm into a room, I'm owning my feeling. I'm identifying the problematic behavior in my I, but I'm owning the feeling. So strive to use that I statement. I feel, I think, I understand, because that's taking ownership. Recognize that every individual sees things from their own point of view, that's informed by their own history, their own background, their own experiences. When we understand that everybody's coming at it from their own angle, it helps us to take that step back and realize that we may be all looking, in fact, at the very same thing, even though we have different perspectives. Take the classic example of 3 blind men that are each led up to an elephant and told to feel what's in front of them and describe what it is. And so the first man says that this elephant is a thick, flexible hose because he's feeling the trunk. And another says, no, an elephant is a tall, powerful, cylindrical object because he's feeling a leg. And the last one says, no, an elephant is a wiry, sinewy, very, very flexible object because he's feeling the tail. Well, they're all feeling an elephant, but each is coming from their own perspective. And only when all three of them put together their perspectives can they start to begin to understand what it is that they're actually working with. Accept the other person's feelings and try to understand them. We can't tell somebody how to feel or how they shouldn't feel. It's important that we simply accept what they're feeling and try our best to understand where they're coming from and why they might be feeling as they do, not judge them for how they feel or why they feel. Be open and honest about your feelings. However, beware of being too honest, because that's typically a cover-up for being rude. Whenever you hear somebody start off a statement with, "Look, I just have to be honest here," typically you know some sort of an insult is coming. Avoid preaching or lecturing. Nobody likes to be lectured to or preached at. Maintain eye contact within cultural limits. Be aware that in some cultures, a sustained eye contact is not showing interest and respect, but rather disrespect. Allow time for the other person to talk, uninterrupted. Oftentimes, bad communication results when we're just simply waiting to jump in and start to say something or to share our opinion. It's important that we leave space for that person to finish their thought, a moment to think. Let them really feel that they have that space and openness and welcomeness to say what it is they have to say. Ask open-ended questions, questions that can't be answered with a single word or a short phrase. So when we ask people, "How are you feeling? How is your day? Is everything going well?" Those are all close-ended questions because they can be answered with a single word, "Fine, okay, I'm doing well." But rather if we say, "How was your day today?" Or better, "Tell me about your day." Or describe something that happened to you today that made you feel good. Now we're forcing them to start thinking and be more open and communicative with us. In general, when talking with your mentees, try to limit your talking to about 1/3 of the conversation. If you find that you're dominating the conversation or speaking more than half the time, chances are you're speaking too much. Use empathy to understand the feelings and the emotions behind the words. The words spoken by themselves could potentially mean a lot of things. You really have to listen with your heart as well to truly understand what is being said. Active listening is one of the most critical skills that you will learn as a mentor. Active listening allows us to participate in the conversation even though we're mostly just listening. As a human being, we have an innate desire to be heard. This means that we really feel that somebody is listening to us, understanding us, getting us. And when we're engaging in active listening skills, that's exactly what we're doing. There are 4 key elements to active listening. The first is paraphrasing. This is when we express back in our words what we've understood from what they have said. Now, careful note, it's not parroting. Parroting is when I say back exactly what you say. So if you say, "Wow, I'm feeling really down today because somebody picked on me at school," and I say, "So, you're feeling really down because somebody picked on you at school?" I'm simply parroting. And most of the time this is not very good at helping them feel heard because it just says that you've got a decent memory and you can repeat back what I said. And sometimes we in fact feel insulted. We'll say, "Yeah, that's what I just said." So it's not showing understanding. But rather, if I were to paraphrase, I might say something like, "Wow, someone's giving you a hard time today at school, and so they made you feel insulted?" So I'm reflecting back in my own words. Now they may come back and say, "Well, no, they didn't insult me. They were actually just kind of making fun of me." So they have a chance to clarify so that I have a better understanding of what it is they actually wanted to say. In our live trainings, we'll be doing a lot of practice of this, so you have a chance to really get a good feel for doing this and doing it well. Door opening. This is where we invite the speaker to simply continue on with what they're saying. We're showing that we're listening, that we're engaged, and that we want them to say more. We may say something like, "I see," or "Please continue," "Tell me more." Something that otherwise tells them that we want them to keep talking and let us know what else they have to say, and then we're interested in hearing it. Probing. This is perhaps one of the most difficult and challenging aspects of active listening. Because in probing, what we need to do is ask a question that's going to give us more insight on what's being said. To do this, we've had to listen carefully, understand what it is they're saying to us, and then think about what other information we might need, or perhaps to invite them to explore an area where they haven't really thought to explore or open up. For example, they may say that their teacher in school ignores them and doesn't pay attention to them. But in our conversation with them, we think that perhaps it may be that they're very shy, that they don't speak up, or that they have just really bad timing. And so the times that they start to partially raise their hand is when the teacher is turned away. So we might ask a probing question to say, do other students hear you? Are other students reacting to what you're saying? Has any other student noticed that the teacher does this to you? Because we're trying to explore and see if maybe, in fact, the teacher hasn't actually heard them or noticed them because of their shy demeanor or attitude. Perception checking. This is where we're paying attention to their body language, to things that are perhaps not being said, topics systematically avoided, or expressions or other things that go beyond the words, where we stop and we check and we say, "Hey, I've noticed that you seem to tense up every time you talk about this subject." Or, "I noticed that you always look down when you're addressing this particular subject." Things where we're checking our perception of what we think we're noticing and what they're saying. Again, inviting them to elaborate on something or perhaps open up about something that they weren't necessarily going to go into unless they noticed that we were paying attention to that area. Silence can also be a very, very powerful tool. Now, there is a good and a bad use of silence. A good use of silence is when we are silent as they are talking and giving them a space to continue. They pause in their thought, and we just give them the silence so that they know that they can take their time, think about what they want to say, and continue their thoughts. We also use silence in order to take time to put together our own thoughts. So perhaps they've said a lot of things, and now we're thinking about how to best respond. It's perfectly fine to be silent and think about what your response is and to compose your own ideas on what you're going to say. Now, if that silence is going on a little bit or feels like it's stretching, it's good to let them know that you're thinking about what they said. You might say, "Wow, I'm thinking about what you've said and I'm just processing it." Or, "Wow, that's really deep. Just give me a moment, I'm just thinking about how to respond to that." And this way, they feel confident that it's not an awkward silence or that you're just blown away by what they had to say, but rather that you're processing and thinking, and they feel good about that. That they've said something that's really made you think, that you're really contemplating what they had to say because it was meaningful. And then when you speak, they're much more focused and engaged. The bad use of silence is silent treatment. So you're punishing them by withholding your attention and not saying anything at all to them. Or if the silence just becomes awkward, that's when they've said some things and you don't know how to respond, and so you just don't say anything, and that silence drags out into this really awkward moment. So again, even if you don't know what to say, or you're feeling like, "Wow, that's going to be awkward because I have no idea what to say," then don't let silence fill that gap. Let them know something like, "Wow, I'm not really sure what to say. Let me get back to you on that." Something to at least acknowledge what they've said, but don't let that drag out into a really awkward silence.